Pursuant to the New Jersey State Sunshine Law, notice of this meeting was advertised in the press and a copy of same has been posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building. All applicants are hereby advised that should you receive board approval tonight, you must come forward and sign a form which informs you regarding the timing or receiving building permits and mercantile licenses. At the end of your case tonight, please see the board administrator to sign the two information sheets. And just in case anybody's here for the 8015 Winchester Avenue case, that case has been taken off the docket for tonight.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Chris Dallas, and I represent the applicant with respect to that matter. And I discussed this with Mr. Bergman. If the matter may come back next month, I would ask that we not be required to renotice and re-advertise, just so long as the relief being requested does not exceed what is being requested now and what we have already noticed for. And that would be only for 1 month. So I would ask that an announcement be made at this meeting to the public that the matter is being carried. If in fact it's not carried, I'll notify Mr. Rubin as soon as I find that out.
Okay.
Of course, if that's okay with the board.
I mean, that's fine with me. It just, so the announcement, what's the meeting date next month? Just
The 27th.
okay.
March 27th.
So it's for the, we're just notifying anyone here that's in the public for that application that it's carried until the next meeting on March 27th, 2014 at 7 p.m.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes of January 30th, 2014?
I'll make a motion.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Approval of resolutions and decisions 07-2014 J&D Development LLC, 08-2014 Anak Cohen, 09-2014 Lewis and Susan Gatman, 10-2014 Joshua Katz, 11-2014 ADCO2 LLC.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Okay. Motion's carried. Okay, our first case is Margate Property Management, David Trop, 7 South Frontenac Avenue.
Roger Rubin. Yes, I do.
But I'm sorry, Mr. Rubin, before we go, Mr. Cristaldi has a conflict. He's in the 200 focus, so he will sit down.
The subject property is a 2-story, 6-unit rental apartment building on a lot of 42 by 80, 3,360 square feet. The rear yard area, which is 13.92 feet deep by 42 feet wide, presently consists of a little concrete on the left side and hard-packed sand throughout the remainder. There are also 2 air conditioners on platforms which are being transferred to the roof under a permit already taken out. The area of hard-packed sand, which is considered landscape area, consists of about 550 square feet. The proposal herein, per the submitted plan by Mr. Trop, is to create a landscaped paver patio utilizing E.P. Henry Echo pavers or equivalent. These pavers have a larger gap between them to improve water drainage. The applicant, unquote, the applicant states that installation will be 6 inches of crushed stone over landscape fabric and 1.5 inches of setting sand. This is basically the method used in backyard patios in Margate, as concrete is not permitted and permeability of rainwater or stormwater is of paramount importance. The variance required is a landscape area variance. The required area is 35% of the total lot, or 1,176 square feet. Presently, the rear yard sand area, which is considered landscape, is 550 square feet, and it would be reduced to 122 square feet if the patio is approved. The variance is a reduction of the deficiency from only 16% of the lot to 3.6%. Comments. As to the principal issue of drainage and percolation, the board has to consider the trade-off between 550 square feet of hard-packed sand and the same area containing 122 square feet of newly landscaped shrub beds, etc., and 328 square feet of permeably installed E.P. Henry pavers on a sand bed. Second, the board may wish to condition approval by requiring specific plantings or by requiring a landscape architect submit a planting schedule of species that will tolerate the shady yard and also absorb a lot of water. 3, the improvement of quality of life of the apartment dwellers is a factor wherein a pleasant outdoor space would be provided in a building presently having no porches, decks, or patios. And finally, the yard is surrounded on the left by a garage wall, in the rear by a brick wall, the post office building's rear wall. There is a vinyl fence on the right, so total privacy is created.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Nick Talvacchia, Cooper Levinson, on behalf of the applicant. I'd like to start, Mr. Chairman, if I may, some exhibits that we can present. There's some photographs showing the existing conditions and 4 photographs, and this schematic prepared, computer rendering showing the proposed additional copies of the So with me is Mr. Trop, who is the sole member of the applicant, the LLC. And for the record, he purchased this building in 2011. As of tomorrow, it will be vacant. It's being renovated. And the pavers in the back and the landscaping is a part of the improvements he'd like to add to the building. As noted in the report, the air conditioning units in the back are being moved to the roof. I also note that in terms of drainage, the building drains to the front. There's drains on each side, but all the way to the front, and they drain from the roof. So there's nothing from the building that drains toward the back. It all goes to the front. That's important because what we are picking up, we are adding some pervious coverage here, but there is some soft area, and the grading of the pavers can be such that the water drains to the soft areas that are proposed in the back, and we think there'll be minimal impact on runoff. We also believe that the amenity will make it a more inviting environment for the guests, for the residents. If it's all landscaped, it has limited functionality for the residents. So we suggest that while this is not a hardship, we think it's a better planning alternative given the current conditions, a very limited area. There's no balconies, there's no porches, there's no setback in the front. It's an older building. So this provides an opportunity for the residents to have a place to go, a place to maybe in the summer to put their beach chairs, to their bikes during summer season. If it were all landscaped, that landscaping would really not be able to be maintained in a good condition if it were actively used. So what we tried to do here is create something that's aesthetically pleasing, that has some landscaping, but also with the paver some functionality. We think it's significantly better than the current condition. And I'd just like Mr. Trop to give you his thoughts for a moment, if I may. Mr. Trop, if you could be sworn.
May I have your full name, please?
David Trop.
Spell your last name? Raise your right hand. Swear the testimony about
Hey, for the record, you're the sole member of the LLC applicant?
Yes, I am.
And you purchased the building approximately 2011? And as of tomorrow, it'll be vacant?
That's correct.
And you're renovating the building today?
I have been renovating the building for the last 3 years.
Please stand close to the microphone, Mr. Shaw.
I've been renovating the building for the last 3 years. This year I'll be finishing up the insides. The insides will be completely done. So I'm shifting my focus a little bit more to the outside, trying to upgrade the entire building to, attract the clientele I'm looking for. So in this case here, one feedback I do get from the seasonal tenants that I've had is they're looking for an outside space, which, the building currently has none except for the, that sand area in the back. So I'm looking to improve it by, moving the air conditioners out, make it appealing, put some tables, grill back there for the tenants to use. And the only other thing I would add is as far as a view from the neighboring properties, there's really only one neighbor. You got the post office behind the building, so there's no view there. On the other side is bounded by a garage. So and then the third side It's, it's an open property, but they're the only ones that really have a view of the property at all, but I think they'll rather enjoy the improvement as opposed to what it looks like now.
So we really have no further exhibits or comment. It's a relatively simple case. Again, we believe that under the C2 criteria for a variance, the planning alternative, the benefits outweigh any detriment here in terms of the aesthetics and the functionality.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions from the board?
Yeah, how big is the space for the trash cans? You got 6 units there. How many square feet is that? How big of a size is that?
The exact size, I haven't determined that yet. Right now, I've got 4 trash cans and 1 recycling thing, so whatever's needed to put those trash cans and recycling bin in there. It'd be approximately 6 by 4.
Anybody else?
Yes, I see you have somewhat of an addition in the front of the building, like 2 roof lines in the front now changing? Is that changing at all?
No, that's all existing.
So it's still concrete in the front?
Yes, concrete all the way from the building, all the way out to the street.
You have 15 feet from the curb to the building. The front of the building looks pretty bare. I mean, there's really on both sides of the building like a 6-foot by 12-foot area that could be made into landscaping area.
That property actually belongs to the city of Margate.
Does it?
The building is within inches of the
There's-
property line.
Just to get more greenery into the lot area.
Are you talking
The front,
within the property lines?
well, there's 9 feet, and then it's about 15 feet from the curb itself to the front of the building. And the other houses down the street come out 6 feet from the front of his building, comes out 6 feet, and there's greenery all the way down the block.
But his property line coincides with the front of the building. So, I mean,
It's just an idea, if we can get more greenery into the front.
if you could, are you suggesting that he plants maybe a curb strip?
Well, no, up
along-
against the building more. Up against the
If I
building.
may, what I was intending to do is to construct, I don't know what you call it, but long planters that would be about 6 feet long, 18 inches high, 18 inches deep. 'Cause, the front of the building really needs some
Yeah, it's
help.
very bare, it's just concrete and brick.
Right. Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean,
You
it
know.
doesn't have really great curb appeal.
With the structure here, I don't see that structure there.
But that's the roof. The front of the building has a slated
Yeah.
roof.
Yeah, all right,
and then
I
the
can see
rear-
that.
The rear part has a flat roof.
But we would have no objection to a condition by the board subject to the governing body granting a license to do a planter in that front area.
Yeah, I think it would be nice to have 2, it looks to me like there's available 6 foot away from the building, 12 foot on each side of the stairway. Whether it's just shrubbery or something like that, it would be
Yeah.
enhance the building.
Yeah, to put shrubbery in, like I can put it in planters, but it is the city's property, so to tear up the concrete, and that'd be a whole different...
Right, anything would help.
Yeah.
Craig, just so you understand, because I have this on my property, the city owns that. He can't do anything with it. Unless he would apply to the city for a license agreement, and then they would specify that it could be for landscaping like they did on my property. But on his own, he just can't go put something there. It's not his property.
I just, when you look down the street, it looks, there's landscaping on all the houses down the street, too, out to 6 feet.
This is different.
Okay.
Well, that could be a condition subject to getting a license agreement. If he doesn't get the license agreement, he can't do it. But how deep is the sidewalk from the front of the building to the curb?
It's about 15 feet.
15 feet.
So you think that 9 would be enough? Okay.
It would be, it's like 9 feet from the curb, and then 6 feet to the building floor.
Yeah. For clarity, I currently have when I first purchased the building, I needed to do repairs to the roof. The roof actually overhangs over the city's property, and so I already have basically a lease for 2 feet in front of the building that I could, so I can, stay within that 2 feet. I think I'd be okay.
So what I was proposing is not to tear up the sidewalk, but to build planters about 18 inches in depth, about
6 feet wide.
6 feet wide, on each side of the building, subject to a license.
you're saying different dimensions than what Mr. Palmisano is saying. He's saying 6 feet deep from the front of the building by 12 feet wide on each side, and your license agreement was only for a roof, because
Right.
it was discovered you had a roof overhang.
Right,
It was a
right.
technicality.
Sure.
It didn't include the right to put
Right.
plantings on the sidewalk.
Yeah,
So it would still be a different license agreement.
Okay. I have no problem with that.
So, that sounds like a good idea.
You have no problem with what?
With putting planters out there.
Right.
I don't intend to, tear up the concrete that belongs to the city, no.
We would build a planter by,
Garage.
maybe 24 inches by 8 or 10 feet wide on each side of the stairs.
The two sides of the building are only 10 feet wide.
Or 10 feet.
Hey, Dave.
So, yes.
Dave, Nick, would it be contingent upon your approval, this planning box? Could they bring it to you, and then you would approve it first before they put it in?
Well, the board should agree on what condition it wants in terms of the dimensions. Craig is talking about 6 by 12 on both sides. You're talking about 2 by 10
Planters.
on
Yeah.
both sides.
Yeah.
I don't know what the board's going to end up. And then, on top of that, there could be a condition that somebody approves the plantings themselves.
We have no condition having Mr. Ruby approve the plantings. as a condition.
They'd be much better off, under their licensing agreement, if they could cut out the existing concrete, and make that the planter instead of planter boxes, because there's very few plants that are going to survive in boxes, especially if you're talking year-round.
Yeah, the other thing I was thinking was the water is permeable through the dirt if you cut the concrete out. The water goes through the dirt.
We would have no objection to cutting the concrete and probably, I'm not a landscape architect, but maybe 3 feet of depth from the building so you have enough room for plant material by, approximately 10 feet wide each front, subject to obviously the city.
Yeah.
That's a good 10.
Okay, anybody else from the board?
But that gives them
Anyone
an
from
addition-
the public like to speak? Okay, public portion's closed.
I was just going to say, does that give them an additional coverage? But it's a city property. That doesn't
City, yeah, it
count.
doesn't count toward, against us. Yeah, you can see.
Right.
Although it does enhance drainage, so you can take that into consideration.
3 by 10 times 2 is 60 additional square feet of drainage in or around the property.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve?
I make that motion.
I'll second.
I have a question. For Mr. Rubin. The existing is 550 square feet. It's just the rear yard. That's the only area that's
The
greenery right now.
Yeah.
It's sand. I understand.
550
Permeable.
square feet, yeah, is
Right.
being reduced to 122.
Right, okay. So for the record, that would be the variance for the coverage from 550 existing to 122 square feet for the variance.
Yep.
Please give your, when you're voting, please give your reasons for your approval or denial. Thank you.
Tom Collins?
Wait, could we just clearly state the condition?
I'm sorry, and the condition is the cutting of the concrete in front of the building as approved by the city. The board would recommend that the license be applied for by the city. If the city doesn't approve it, then the condition is eliminated, and it would be 3 feet by 10, 3 feet by 10 feet on each side, and that, the plantings would have to be approved by the zoning officer.
Perfect.
Okay. Okay, vote?
Tom Collins?
I vote in favor of the application. I think this area is very de minimis. From the renderings that you're providing, I think it's going to make a major enhancement to the neighborhood. And I think by putting the plantings, and I'm sure the city for grass, because they'll limit you to grass or trees or shrubs, will make a nice enhancement to the street. So it'll be a betterment to the neighborhood, and I don't think there's any detriment. So I vote in favor.
This will certainly be a vast improvement over what is there. The pavers that are proposed, I know, drain very well. I see no detriment. I vote yes.
All I want to say is thank you, Dave, for taking a very tired old building and bringing it back to life. It was really in need of a lot of repair. As to the variance for the landscape area variance, I vote in favor for it because it is going to help that neighborhood out immensely.
With the added landscaping and the backyard, it's going to be a nice addition to the block. I vote in favor of it.
David Carter.
I vote in favor, and I think it'll be a tremendous improvement to the building and to the building.
I also vote in favor of the variance. I believe the benefits here, most notably the increased water drainage, certainly outweigh no detriments that I see. I vote in favor of it.
I think the aesthetics and functionality outweigh any detriment. I vote in favor.
Yes, I vote in favor. It looks like it's got great drainage, it's got nice appeal. It certainly is improving the landscape of the block.
I'm going to vote yes. I think that'll clean up the backyard nicely, and hopefully you'll get the licensing agreement, and that'll really dress up the front.
Thank you very much.
Application passes.
I marked 8. I marked 4 photos, but then I marked like 3 groups of photos. And then this is A8. So it's 8. 1 through 8, yeah.
Our next case is Robert Newstatter, 8 South Pembroke Avenue, Block 117, Lot 12, in the S10 District, to grant a minor subdivision with variances. Taxes are current, and proof of advertising and notifying is satisfied.
Roger Rubin? I do. The subject property is a 2.5-story, single-family house set to the left side of a lot 92 feet in width and 80 feet in depth, totaling 7,360 square feet. The applicant has owned this beautifully maintained and attractively landscaped property for decades. Many years ago, it was actually 2 lots, each being 46 feet wide, with the current house in place on the left lot and the right lot being just vacant land. At that time, Judge Newstatter decided he wanted to create an extensive flower garden on the right lot and to access it from the house by a covered brick porch on the right wall. To do so would have required variances, and to avoid the variances, he decided to consolidate the 2 lots, allowing the porch to be constructed by right. Now, many years later, with estate planning in mind, the judge wishes to restore the 2 lots precisely as they were, to demolish the brick porch, and thereby to recreate what he had previously. Unfortunately, several nonconformities are created, which now creates variances for the board's consideration. The actions required are minor subdivision from 1 lot to 2. See variances regarding restoration of the left lot to its exact condition prior to the consolidation as follows. For both lots, width is 46 feet versus 50 required, and area is 3,680 square feet as compared to 4,000 square feet required. For Lot A, the house lot, right side setback at 2.99 feet versus 5 feet required. Lot A, building coverage is 41.3% as compared to 36.6% required. Lot A, again, the house lot, landscape area is 25.5% versus 35. Comments. Basically, the applicant is just restoring what he had to its original condition. All of the above variances were legal nonconformities before the applicant consolidated to create a garden lot, which provided open space, drainage, elaborate landscaping, and beauty to the block and the neighborhood for perhaps 20 years or so. Judge Newstetter personally worked on that garden in his limited spare time over those years and incidentally won several prestigious awards from the Margate Beautification Board and the Absecon Island Little Gardens Club for his efforts. One year he was called upon to address the Beautification Board's seminar, Ask the Garden Expert, regarding planting techniques and species to grow on our barrier island environment. Number 2, recreation of the two 46-foot wide lots conforms them to the balance of the block from the applicant's property down to Atlantic Avenue. All 4 lots, plus Newstatter's, thus all 6, are 46 feet wide and 80 feet deep, the Atlantic Avenue lot being slightly larger due to the angle of Atlantic Avenue. All have similar sized houses with similar setback nonconformities. So far from being an anomaly, the proposal is in conformity with the entire block face, with the sole exception being the oversized Ventnor Parkway lot at the north end of the street. Number 3, if the subdivision is denied and the 92-foot lot remains, a new house on it might be considered inappropriately oversized compared to the pattern on both sides of the street, and it could be so large that its land use intensity could be quite more than 2 more modest homes on 46-foot lots. 4, of course, any new house on Lot B would have to meet S40 standards and height Zone B height limitations, or else a variance application would be needed to this board. The board should note that we usually require schematic building plans for non-by-right subdivisions, but in this case, the staff committee, considering the unique nature of the case and the hardship it would impose on the applicant, did not so require. The essence of this case, as stated above, is to give back to the applicant what is his due after the gift of beauty he gave to his neighborhood for so many years. If approved, 2 conditions are necessary: satisfaction of all non-waivable city engineer requirements, and that letter is attached, and demolition of the right side brick porch and steps prior to recordation of the subdivision.
Good evening, Chairman, members of the board. For the record, Nick Talvaki, Cooper Levinson, on behalf of Judge Newstatter and Mrs. Newstatter, sitting here today. Pleased to be here. We have with me Arthur Ponzio, who will be our planner tonight. The report is detailed, and I just point out a few things before I'll bring Mr. Ponzio up. The proposed lots are within 10%, less than 10% deviation from what's permitted or required. We also believe that the lots as proposed are more consistent with the immediate lots, and in fact, the zoning than the current lot. The current lot is substantially larger than the zoning calls for, and really is, we believe, not appropriate for that particular area. And as you may know, there is some case law where courts have held that a subdivision denied for a lot width variance, the Montvale, the Green Meadow case, the court reversed the denial of the subdivision on the finding that the lots as proposed, although not strictly conforming, were more consistent with the zone plan than the large undivided lot. And we think that's the case here, that this lot is really larger, much larger than the zone plan calls for. And as Mr. Ponzio will talk about the history of how these lots were created and why there's some 46-foot lots and 47-foot lots and 50-foot lots. So the variance requested tonight is really, as Mr. Rubin's report notes, is to restore the prior condition and bring an oversized lot into better conformity with the zone plan. So with that, I'd like to offer Mr. Ponzio as an expert in planning. I do want to point out, well, get qualified first, Art, please, and sworn.
Add your full name, please.
Based on his prior qualification as a planning expert, I asked that Mr. Ponzio be found to be a planning expert. Okay.
Thank you.
So Ponzio, could you describe what you're showing the board now?
Okay, this is Exhibit A1. Right side of the photograph, the lot that we're speaking about, has another photograph of that. Not much to see, it's all landscaping. existing home to the left, and the lot.
And Mr. Ponzio, and we did speak to Mr. Gormley, and he said if the board were to approve this tonight, he asked for two things, if you could describe, to minimize the impact to him, and we've agreed to.
Thank you. It's on a very large lot.
Think that most of the lots would be 50 feet, and there'd be an anomaly here or there. That's just not the case. I did a little research on that, really to get an understanding how this came to be. And I think you'll find...
For the record, Art, what are you referring to now?
What they call a Mueller Atlas, dated 1914. I
Would be Exhibit
I have
A5.
a series of these. Nick, can you hold that?
Yep.
I didn't want to tear the page out. This is a really nice book. Okay. What you have is a swath of the city of Margate, and it's right in our area. Pembroke Avenue, I'm sure you can't see from that distance. Pembroke Avenue is here. The subject property is right there. You can see that. It's 46 feet, back in 1914. I look at this as it's maybe not the absolute original layout of the lots, because there have been a couple consolidations in the map that I see, but for all intents and purposes, this is about originally how this part of the city was laid out. It's really interesting how they came up with the lot size. If you notice, Ventnor Parkway is on a slight angle. So the further you get, let's say, toward Longport, west, the larger the lots would be in that block because of the angle which diverges from a square as you go toward the south. Look at Atlantic Avenue. It also does the same thing. So you have a block that normally the blocks in Margate for the most part are pretty square, other than the gardens in some areas. This block, the street to the left, the street to the right, both angled out. So the further you go toward the west, toward Longport, the larger the lots get, the blocks get. Okay, so that itself doesn't tell a story. So I looked at the dimensions of every block from Mansfield Avenue all the way down to Vendome Avenue. It's interesting how they did this. What the designers of this part of the city did when they laid this out is they took Ventnor Parkway and they said that's going to be our boulevard. As magnificent as it is today, probably was starting to be that then, as how homes started to get built. They laid that out such that they took 90 feet on the southerly side and 90 feet on the northerly side, and they said those are going to be large estate-sized lots. And the rest of the blocks we're going to divide in essentially equal-sized lots. Now, you would think they would have picked a number, 50 feet, and carried that for all the lots. You get to the end of the block, and the block is whatever the odd dimension is, it is. That's not what they did. What they tried, because that would have created some lots that were larger, and some lots perhaps maybe got to the end of the block and it was smaller. They didn't want that. they did a pretty ingenious thing. They took the total dimension, and they had in their mind, we want to create lots essentially 50 feet, but no less than 45. And we're going to take each block and look at each one as almost as if it's in a separate zone. And we're going to do the math. We're going to lay the 90 feet in from Venter Parkway. We're going to take the distance of the rest of the block. We're going to divide it out so the lots are pretty much equidistant in size, no less than 45, no bigger than 50, and they laid out each block. And how about this? Almost every block is different in the lot frontages. So, for instance, you start all the way up here at Mansfield Avenue, and the lots, there's your 90 foot. The rest of the lots are 47 with an oddball lot on Atlantic Avenue on the angle. So you have all 47-foot lots there. On the back side of that, you have lots of 47, and because the math just worked out that they would be all 47 with one odd lot. You carry that through, all the way through, you happen to hit a block here on Osborne, just made it. The lots are all 50. The math worked out perfectly. Also, on the westerly side of Osborne Avenue, the lots are all 50. It worked out just about the same on the east side of Pembroke, and today you have most of the lots on the east side of Pembroke at 50. Let's see what happened when you got to the west side of Pembroke. Well, when you did the additions and you added it all up and you did the math, the lots came out at 46 feet. So here they created lots 50 on one side, 46 on the other side of the same street. Kind of maybe didn't make sense, but in the logic that they applied back then, I can see how they did that. To some extent, it makes sense because you're not left with these anomaly lots, these big lots at the corners and things like that. Now, you continue, I'm not going to read every single one off, but you continue down, and they become 47, 46, occasionally at 50, and down here when you get to the end at Vendome, you have 45s. And they also, not pertinent today because it's in a different zone, they did the same thing on the north side block. If you look at the north side block, it's developed the same way. Now, through the years, so that's the origination of the lot. So there it tells me how that 46 lot dimension came to be and why in a 50-foot zone, we have 5 lots in a row that are all 46 feet. We have 47-footers across the street and some 46-footers behind that, and yet the next block, they're 50-footers. That's how they did that. So it has some logic to it when you think about it. Because if you would have created the lots at all at 50, by the time when you oddball blocks, when you get down to the corners, one lot might be, you don't have 100, but you might have an 84-foot lot, or you might have a 39-foot lot. They wanted to avoid that. So they essentially did an averaging, if you will, for all the blocks, created these odd distances. So we live with that today. Many of lots today in this whole area of the city are of those same exact dimensions. Through the years, some folks have been able to buy a couple lots, or take 3 and make 2, or whatever the case may be, and you've seen many subdivisions like that that have occurred in this area, and that's why you're seeing them, because of these odd dimensions that were created essentially when the city was laid out. So here we are today, and as was, Nick, I'll take that down. Here we are today, as was reported in Mr. Rubin's report correctly, that we have a situation which existed for all those years. We have an applicant, a client, who's lived in the home for, I believe, 54 years, which is outstanding in itself, and maintained that property as he has for all those years. And we're looking really to get back to what we had at one time. And we'd like to just continue that. I think by the exhibits you see, that I think hopefully you'll agree that this proposal, though not meeting today's standard, really does meet a standard that's been established throughout the city since, as far back as I can go, 1914, carried through the years. I look at a lot of benefit there in that it's compatibility to the neighborhood. As you can see, not only in my testimony, but in the aerial photograph that you saw a few moments ago. I don't believe there is a significant negative impact. Every variance, and you've heard me say it many times, every variance has an impact. And the impact is that you don't meet the ordinance. The ordinance is set forth that we should meet the ordinance, and no doubt you try to. But essentially, the test of variance relief that is sought before any board is the variance substantial? Is it significant? Is it significant enough that it would override your decision to grant an approval to an applicant for a particular request? So I looked at those issues myself and studied this property for quite some time now, and looked at the adjoining properties. Matter of fact, worked on the adjoining property to the north, on the Parkway, and I truly felt that there was a significant negative variance. My client and I have spoke about this many, many times. We hesitated at times to bring this before the board until we fully analyzed this and in my mind, could rationalize the fact that I believe these variances are could be well issued by the city. And I really, honestly, in this particular case, and I know there's sensitive cases with these smaller sized lots, I think this particular case fits well. And I don't see any negative impact associated with it.
In order for two houses with greater opportunity for setbacks and open space.
We get into that conversation a lot in cases like this, where you're subdividing essentially a large property in an area where there are other small lots adjoining and into the rear and whatnot. And if you think about it, a larger home, if someone chose to buy this property, or the applicant decided going down and build a larger home, whatever, it's a potential. What happens is you lose the center opportunity for the setback in the middle. Right now, on this property, assuming it's subdivided and assuming a home gets built next door, you have three setbacks to deal with. You have the side yard setback on the right, the ocean side. You have the center setback between the two homes, say 10 feet, and you have the northerly setback. Essentially, you have air-light open space that can penetrate through the property at three locations. If you build one home and center it wherever on the property, however size it is or this or that, you're dealing with two setbacks. You have a setback to the right, you have a setback to the left. You lose that middle setback. So now, if you think about impact, if you're the adjoining property to the rear, and you have two homes built, and then you enjoy some open space and air through the center of the property, you would lose that. So there's a case where it might not be the right idea to build one home in a lot, on a lot with these configurations with the homes that are built behind it. Maybe in a case that I just described, if you had one home built behind it, it might not be such an impact. But in this case, I think the one home proposal, not that we're proposing that, we're not, but just think about it for a moment. If it were to happen, if it would remain in one lot and years down the road, one home would be built, no variances perhaps would be required, but it could potentially be more of an impact than we're seeking tonight.
And also, in your professional opinion as a planner, you think we meet the criteria for C2 variance, that is a better planning alternative than an oversized lot?
I think it is a better planning alternative, Nick, for all the reasons stated. And in addition, I think that the potential for impact is diminished with the proposal that we're seeking here tonight from the applicant. And in my opinion, I don't believe there's any substantiality to the variance relief that we're seeking. And I think that we also meet the spirit of the ordinance, consistent with the neighborhood pattern, consistent with the historic pattern of development, no doubt. And I believe that the variances are well warranted.
And then finally, as I noted a little earlier, there was a discussion.
Nick, we can't hear you.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now? Is this off?
Did it go off?
Not too loud. There we go. Hello? All right, there we go. As I noted earlier, we had a discussion with Mr. Gormley. In the event the board were to approve this, there were two things he asked us to do. Could you describe those to the board?
Yes. The applicant has agreed, in the event that the approval is granted tonight, to match the front yard setback of the home to the north. That is approximately 8 feet to the porch, 13.7 feet, 13.73 feet to the wall of the building, the front wall of the home. We would agree to minimize any, again, further minimize any impact, to have the front of our building, should one be built here, to equal that front yard setback, number one. Number two, we would agree to establish a 10-foot side yard setback on that common property line, to that common property line on our northerly side, so that you would have essentially about 27 feet between the two buildings, if and when a building would be built on the new lot.
And that would be shown on the subdivision plat and recorded, if the board were to approve that, yes.
We would amend the plat to show that, and that would require a permanent recordation.
Maybe anything further, Mr. Ponzio? That completes our presentation.
I just want to make an announcement that David Carter recused himself from this. Any questions or comments from the board? Okay.
I have one question, Mike.
Go ahead.
Hey, Art, can we get that book? That's a that's part of the testimony.
No, we won it.
I actually have two of them, but you're not getting it.
Okay.
There's a 24 series, a 38 series, and a 14 series. There's a 1896 series too, but mine is a little...
That was
some of
that,
those-
right?
I am. See, you guys come with that.
Right, since there's no questions from the board, would anyone from the public like to speak? Okay, public portion is closed. Can I get,
Stan, just to clarify, are we voting on this with the lot restriction conditions on this? With the front setback and the side setback? Is that a condition of the approval?
Well, that's up to the board. I mean, the neighbor wants it as a condition.
Well, they offered it.
They're
They said
offering
they're
it.
putting it on the...
The board doesn't have to do it, but, I mean, if it's going to help,
Right, so they offered it, so
if the
we're
board thinks
saying
it's
that's going to be...
good conditions, yes, we can make it part of
Okay.
the conditions.
Does anybody have problems with those conditions?
Anyone, yeah, that's the next.
I don't think it's our area to join in conditions. That'd be a deed restriction, right? Between the buyer and the seller.
Well, it could be that way if they wanted it to be that way. But, I mean, I think the condition, really, you can't restrict, I don't know how much you can restrict an adjacent property owner from making it a higher setback than what's required by the zoning code. I think we can make it a condition.
Well, it would be shown on the recorded subdivision plat as the setback lines for side yard, 10 foot on one side, and the 13.7 on the front. And once it's recorded, and if the board will approve it, it's because it's a condition of a variance, it's certainly enforceable.
Yeah.
So we would be making that a condition of the variance at the applicant's request.
The applicant's request.
You can, yes. You don't have to. I mean, but what I'm taking it as is if it's not done, then there might be an objection or some, you know, we might have to reopen public portion to have that neighbor give us reasons, which we don't have to if the board just wants to.
I just didn't know whether we had the right to require a setback greater than the ordinance requires.
well, if the,
We're offering, we're amending
Yeah.
our application to impose those self-imposed setbacks.
right, if they're okay with it, why are we talking?
As long as we have that authority.
We do.
We do.
Okay.
Can I, if you've done a technical issue, just, okay. If the board were to approve this, we must approve with an 190. The judge is not yet ready to do anything with that lot. He'd like to reserve the portion of landscape. Would be happy to post some kind of a bond before any permit could ever be issued. That's your call. So rather than, you know, within 190 days be forced to take out the porch from the side and really disturb that, we'd like to leave that in place because it might be several years, but we can't hold off according to the subdivision because it would expire by law within 190 days. So we would post, you know, reasonable either letter of credit or cash to ensure that those improvements are approved. And of course, no building permit could be issued for the new lot until that porch is removed. So we ask you to consider that under these circumstances because there's no immediate plans for that lot if it were to be approved.
Sure.
I got a question for Jim on that one. If you do go in for the permit's good for... Jim?
The only thing with this restriction on the deed is in the garage wasn't here.
Okay.
Did you know that?
Put bad batteries in?
I'll talk louder.
That sounds good.
So,
Do you, Mr. Tavaka, do you have any type of an idea how much the cost would be to posting the letter of credit or bonding?
we would be happy to, if the board were to agree, confer with Mr. Galantino as a condition, whatever he thinks is reasonable, we would abide by it.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. As long as they post the bond for it and it's protected, the removal of it, I'm fine with
So, so we would, whatever number Mr. Galantino thought was a reasonable demolition number, we would post that probably as cash or letter of credit. It's very hard to get a bond in reality.
Right.
Okay. All right, we okay with that? Yes, okay. So, you want to read the conditions?
Well, the conditions I have are 8 sets of revised plans satisfying all non-waivable conditions of the city engineer's letter, and showing on that revised plan the required front setback of 8 feet to the porch, 13.73 feet to the front wall of any future house, and that would be recorded, and a minimum of 10 feet on the right side setback, and that would be recorded with the subdivision plat. And then the bond.
And then a letter of credit or cash at an amount as requested, as required by the building department, Mr. Galantino.
Yeah, and no, excuse me, and no building permit to be issued until the porch is gone.
Okay,
I'll make that motion.
well, wait a minute, you done?
Let's just for the record put on what the requests are, just so we can be clear in case anything happens. With the conditions we already stated, the actual applications for a minor subdivision with C variances, the subdivision would obviously be 2 lots. Lot A, which is has the existing improvement on it, the variance would be lot width, 46 feet is requested, the requirement's 50 feet, right side setback, proposed 2.99 feet, required 5 feet. Coverage required is 36.6%, proposed is 41.3%. Landscape area proposed is 25.5%, required 35%. And for Lot 2, which is the vacant lot, it's a variance for just a lot width, which the proposal is 46 feet, again, requirement's 50 feet.
And lot area, Stan. Lot area.
And a lot area, as a result of the 4-foot shortage.
Okay, do I hear a motion to approve?
I make the motion.
Second?
And Mike Pistorius.
Okay.
Tom Collins?
I vote in favor of the application. Coming into tonight, I was a little skeptical. I think Mr. Ponzio did an excellent job in giving the history of Margate, determining the lots. If the lots on the same side of the street were larger and not the same, it would be a tough decision. Reverting back to what the original founders laid out, I don't think has any detrimental value to the neighborhood. I don't think that Judge Newstetter would come in if this was a detriment to the neighborhood, because I don't think that anybody in this room has done more to give back to Margate than he has. So I think this is a good application. I vote yes.
Clem Wozleski?
Well, it's always sad to lose greenery, especially a spot as nice as this. And as you all know, I'm generally opposed to subdivisions. But this proposal will be consistent with the rest of the development of the block, so I vote yes.
Jim Galantino?
I vote in favor of the minor subdivision from 1 to 2 lots, and I also vote in favor of the C variance for the restoration of left lot. I see it's not a detriment to the neighborhood. Nice job, Nick.
Mike Cristaldi?
I came in very skeptical also with this, but after hearing Mr. Ponzio's and the owners, so neighbor-friendly with the setbacks and everything, I vote in favor of.
Craig Palmisano?
I also agree with my fellow board members. Mr. Ponzio's dissertation of it was very good. All the lots are 46 feet on that side, and I vote in favor of it.
Destina Hess?
I also vote in favor of the request for the subdivision as well as each of the C variances. I certainly don't see any detriment here. I believe that the city was fortunate enough to receive the benefit of that landscaping for so long. It's essentially a do-over, and I have no objection. I vote in favor.
Remy Pelosi?
For all the reasons stated on the record by the other board members, I too approve this application.
Joe DiGirolamo?
I'm voting in favor of the application for the reasons stated above, going back to the lot as it was before, as presented by the evidence from the group here. So,
Mike Richmond?
I think going from 46 to 50 feet is a pretty big stretch, but it does fit the pattern of the neighborhood, and I'm going to vote yes for it.
Application passes 9-0.
Thank you very much.
Okay, our next case is, okay, Dave has returned to the table. Our next case is Bruce and Linda Goldstein, 202 North Essex Avenue, Block 405.02, Lot 2, in the S25 district, to grant a C variance for front setback and possibly others. Taxes are current and proof of advertising and notifying is satisfied.
Roger Rubin. Yes, I do. The subject property is a one-story, single-family house on a lot of 45 by 60 or 2,700 square feet with a roofed front porch on the left side of the house facing it from the street. The proposal herein, per the Ponzio plan submitted, is simply to enlarge that front porch, roofed all the way across from sidewall to sidewall. The enlarged portion would measure 12.2 feet wide by 8.4 feet deep and would have a continuation of the roof line and railing detail of the existing portion. In all, the enlarged porch would be about 28 feet wide. When the applicant bought the house several months ago, they concrete paved an area on the right front area of the house, which I believe had previously been stones, as well as the curb strip without permits. Part of this application is a restoration of the paved areas rearranged around the enlarged front porch. Variances are front setback for the porch, 8.7 feet is required versus 3.3 feet to the extension of the front porch. Considerations are that the porch to the house on the left is 3.4 feet back. Also that the house to the right is quite distant, being about 42 feet between porches. Site visits should be helpful in determining if views are obstructed or privacy inhibited or building mass is a problem. Front setback to the porch steps, 2 feet is required versus 6 inches as proposed. The board considers safety and aesthetics. Note the revised landscape plan relates to both issues. Landscape areas, 35% overall lot is required versus 20% as planned. 60% front of house is required versus 37.3% as shown. I'm not sure if these are variances or to what extent, because the application does not show the existing condition prior to the non-permitted concrete work that took place. Factual testimony by the Ponzio Company will be helpful in adjudicating this matter. If the additions balance the landscape area covered by the porch enlargement, and if there is no net reduction, then perhaps there is no variance. If there is a landscape variance, the board may consider the rearrangement and the enhancements proposed. Additional considerations: 1, the curb strip is to be restored to grass and additional plantings are proposed, including removal of the stone beds. 2, aesthetics and quality of life for the homeowners is a consideration. 3, the fact it is a one-story house is a consideration in terms of overall building mass. No conditions are suggested at this time should the board approve the application.
Thank you, members of the board. Mr. Chair, my name is Chris Bailenson. I represent Bruce and Linda Goldstein, who are here this evening. With respect to the property they own at 202 North Essex Avenue, it's a little rancher, one off the corner at Essex Avenue. Lot 2, Block 405.02, it's in the S25 zone. A relatively simple application this evening. This is, as noted, this is a small rancher. The Goldsteins simply wish to pick up a little additional outdoor living space by expanding their front porch by a dimension of approximately 8 feet in depth by 12 feet in length, which would take the concrete front porch essentially across the front of the house. That necessitates a variance for front yard setback to the porch and for setback to the steps. What John will tell you, there's also a really relatively insignificant variance for some landscaping. John will go through those numbers with you. But other than that, those are the two variances. They relate to the porch, and it's just an expansion of the porch. John can kind of go through the detail with you. John?
State your name for the record.
John Barnhart.
Swear the testimony about you is
John, you're a licensed professional engineer and planner in the state of New Jersey? And have appeared before this board previously?
Yes.
I want you to take the board through the plan that you prepared for the Goldstein's property.
Okay. As Chris indicated, the application before you this evening is to...
You want that, John?
Is it working now? Oh, yeah, okay. The application before you this evening is to expand an existing covered porch, which you see in the hatched area on the plan that I have before you, and so that the porch covers the entire front of the home. Together with that, as Mr. Rubin's report points out, is to remove some hard surface that was put in the governor strip or the curb strip area and return that to lawn area, and then to remove some concrete surface that was put down in a formerly landscaped area and recreate some landscape around the base of the proposed porch. The application does require variance relief for front yard setback from the porch. You can see the existing porch sits 3.3 feet from the front property line, and the intent is to maintain that identical setback of 3.3 feet going across the front of the home. We believe that variance is clearly justified because there's really no negative impacts associated with the proposal, and it's truly a beautification of the front of the dwelling. Mr. Rubin's report points out that there's a large distance between this home and the home adjacent to us, and if you look at our plan, you can see that our driveway is adjacent to the proposed expansion area of approximately 12 feet. Our neighbor's driveway is also coincident with our driveway, so the home is, as Mr. Rubin points out, is almost 40 feet away from the proposed expansion area. I'll just...
John, the house to the south side, the porch is similar in...
When you say the other corner, Chris, you're talking about this house? Yeah, our porch exists at that location, so from the house on the corner, there's no impact or not even any visual. You won't be able to see the proposed expansion, but I just want to throw this up quickly to show you how this house sits. This house is the house that would potentially be impacted, so I just want to show you how far this house does in fact sit from the expansion area. So, we think this is a case of a flexible C variance where the benefits of the beautification of the home clearly outweigh any potential detriments.
John, let's run through that landscape issue. When the Goldsteins purchased beds that they did fill in with concrete, one of the stone beds was raised bed with just crushed rock in there.
That's correct.
River rock in there. And the governor strip also was a raised stone bed. There wasn't green space there, but there were actually stones. There
were stones here, and I've in fact some stones along the other side of the home as well. So the proposal is, with the addition of the 105 square foot porch area, if you go back to the pre-paved condition, this application actually reduces the coverage of the site, the pervious coverage of the site, reduces it by 50 square feet. So as you can see on our plan, we called out that the actual landscape coverage will be 20%. It was 21.8%. So there is a variance necessary. We would argue that's a very de minimis variance, and the fact that he's taking what was a stone area, it's soft space. It does allow percolation of water and what have you, but we're rejuvenating the landscaping around the entire front of the front porch. The front porch itself will provide aesthetic value, so we think that all of that, when you look at it together, really justifies the variance.
I understand there's a 1.8% increase in land.
That's correct. That would be along the side of the home here. The prior stone area did project past the home, but it stopped at the face of the home. So we are adding about 25 or so square feet of new landscape area where there never was before. And there is one other small variance, and that is with regard to the steps. The steps in your ordinance are required to be 2 feet back from the front property line. We are proposing 6 inches back from the front property line. However, if you look at the back edge, at the placement of the back edge of sidewalk, the perceived dimension, if you're walking along the sidewalk, is actually just a little bit over 2 feet.
That's because the way the planter beds existed, the encroaching on it.
Yeah, that happens all over town, as I'm sure everybody's aware, is that the back of sidewalk and the property line are not necessarily coincident. So you actually have some landscape area that encroaches into the right-of-way.
And all of the landscaping is being replanted and redone.
That's correct.
Is there a chance you would set the steps back in so it wouldn't be a safety hazard?
Like, the only reason we don't think it's a safety hazard is because of the way those existing planter beds are. As you come down the sidewalk, they will be about 2 feet set from the edge of the bed. So it's not a situation where you're walking on the sidewalk and they're right there.
Okay.
The planting beds as they exist come out well beyond the property line into the right of way. And then there's the sidewalk. So it appears when you walk on the sidewalk that the steps are coming back.
Okay.
I think that's going to be raised a little bit, the border around it.
20 minutes.
For this block.
Absolutely, definition.
I'd like to note that the engineer is doing architectural work.
You can have this presentation cost more than the additional cost. Bring it back.
Sure. You'd also be complying with the law. John, you don't really mean you're going to mix cedar roof shingles with asphalt roof shingles, do you?
Is that what we're saying here, Clem?
Yeah.
New say.
Well, I don't think it's advisable. The only other thing, do you think the government strip's wide enough to get a tree in? I know it's very narrow.
I think it's wide enough to get a tree, and it's only 2.5 feet from face to curb, so the actual soft space area is only about 2 feet.
Think that's too small to get a tree in?
Pretty tight.
Yeah. Well, it'd have to be very small because of the root ball.
The root ball, the root ball would be, you'd have to actually break out sidewalk to get a root ball in.
Yeah, it would look nice, just a suggestion.
Anybody else on the board?
Turn your mic off. Hey, John.
Yeah.
This doesn't have a bulkhead, does it?
Thank you.
Okay, public portion is closed.
I'm going to ask Mr. Galantino again, do you have nothing with those steps? Because I'm really not understanding. I don't know if, is it me?
We can work that out on plan review. I mean, why do you need to address that right now at the board?
Inside the planter, slide inside.
Yeah, they're inside the planter, 2 feet back.
There's a house across the street, in the middle, it's like,
Yeah, I saw
where
that.
it comes to. Okay, I'm sorry.
All right, I'm through.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the application?
I'll second.
Let's go through like what we're approving here. The motion would be in the affirmative for variances for front yard setback to the porch. The requirement's 8.7 feet. The proposal's 3.3.
Push your mic closer.
Sorry about that. The front yard setback to the porch, the requirement's 8.7 feet. The proposal is 3.3 feet. Front setback to the porch steps, requirement's 2 feet. The proposal's 6 inches. The landscape, overall landscape, the requirement's 35%. Proposal's 20%. You heard testimony that there was an existing 21%. Landscape for the front yard areas, requirement 60%, and the proposal's 37.3%. And there are certain conditions, I think, that are agreed to, like restoring, in Mr. Rubin's report, I just want to make it clear, there's a condition that they're going to restore the curb strip of grass and make some additional plantings
Well,
based on your suggestion.
that doesn't have to be conditioned because that's in the proposed plan.
Oh, it is? Okay. Then there's no conditions.
Hey, Stan? Stan, to be clear, there's
Yes.
2 front yard setback variances?
Yes, the front setback to the porch and a front setback to the steps. So there's overall 4 variances, I believe, in the landscape overall and front yard landscape.
Okay, can we get a vote?
Tom Collins,
I vote in favor of the application. I think it's very de minimis. There's no negative impact to the neighborhood in terms of this applicant extending the porch in the same direction, in the same line. The property right now is very bland in that area, and I think by doing the enhancements and the landscaping, it's going to actually have an attribute and increase the value of the neighborhood and the aesthetics. I vote yes.
The aesthetics of this improvement far outweigh any minor detriments. I vote in favor.
Jim Galantino,
I concur with the Clem statement, and I agree with it, and I approve the application.
I'm going to agree with the other board member. I was a little confused there because of the drawing of no planner, then planner. But I think the aesthetics is what the rest of the board said. I approve the
Craig
variance.
Palmisano,
I agree with my fellow board members. There's really no detriment for the views for this house to block anybody else's view, and it's a nice improvement for the house itself. I vote yes.
And I feel that the enhancements are very beneficial to the community, neighborhood.
I also vote in favor of the application as to each of the setback variances being requested. I don't see any detriment, and I believe this will be a significant improvement as to the aesthetics of the home.
Randy Pelosi,
I approve. I believe the aesthetics and functionality outweigh any detriment.
Mike Richmond,
I'm going to vote yes. I think that the landscaping will be a big improvement for the neighborhood, and I'm okay with it.
Thank you all very much.
Rod Dalenka, 8011 Bayshore Drive, Block 1200, Lot 7, in the S60 District, to grant a C variance for side yard setback for pool and possibly others. Taxes are current and proof of advertising and notifying is satisfied.
Roger Rubin? Yes. The subject property is a 2.5-story single-family home on a bayfront lot of 75 by 125 feet. Uplands are 9375 square feet. Presently, there is a bayfront deck with a hot tub on it, and the application herein is to remove the hot tub and construct at that location a swimming pool measuring 9 feet by 28 feet and incorporating within it a spa area as per the plan submitted by Arthur W. Ponzio Engineers. The proposed pool would be 3 feet from the right side property line to the water edge. Fence surround plans are also submitted. The pool equipment is at the other left side of the house in an enclosure as required, meeting required setbacks. The variance required is pool setback, 10 feet required versus 3 feet as stated above. Considerations. As always with pool variances, the board members should, during their site visits, determine if there are any detrimental impacts in terms of privacy and noise, safety, and in this case, possible view obstruction. 2, regarding the question of view, in your site visits, you should see if the last 10 feet or so of fencing, which goes to the bulkhead, is a view issue or not. If it is, perhaps an alternate fence design could be considered, such as plexiglass or other. 3, the existence of evergreens along the property line as already creating a visual separation may be considered. 4, also the applicant correctly states that the right side neighbor's principal sitting out area is distant from this property line, reducing noise and privacy impacts. And finally, as always in pool setback cases, there should be discussion as to whether or not the pool could be shortened or shifted for larger setback. No conditions are suggested at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Rubin. Members of the board, my name is Chris Balance, and I represent Mr. Delinka, who is here with us this evening. He is the owner of 8011 Bayshore Drive. It's Lot 7 in Block 1200, and I think it's in the S60 zone on Bayshore Drive. Mr. Delinka makes application this evening for a single variance for a 3-foot side yard setback to a proposed pool to replace a hot tub which is existing at that location now. As this board is aware, the required side yard setback, the Margate and rear yard setback for the pool is 10 feet, making construction of the pool difficult, if not impossible, on most lots in Margate. In this instance, because of the location of the neighbor and the neighbor's yard, we're looking at the subject side here. Mr. Delinka proposes a pool generally in this location where you see the hot tub. Before locating the pool there, we spoke to my partner's parents, the Brods, who live next door, and asked them if they would mind if he sought variance relief to do this. They had no problem with it. They had no problem with it. And I spoke to Steve, my partner. They had no problem with it because their primary outdoor living space, as you can see, is kind of encircled within this half view of landscaping and decking. They use the center area and have no problem with Mr. Delinka with that pool being much more forward of their outdoor living space, which actually is adjacent really to the wide top of bulkhead kind of deck that they have, so it really doesn't interfere whatsoever with any outside area they use. And as I said, Mr. Delinka spoke with them before locating the pool there. It simply gives him the opportunity to utilize the rest of his rear yard at this really nice house on the water, and also have a small pool in a location that really doesn't offend anybody, but for Margate's ordinance where it requires 10 feet, and we're asking for 3. John can touch upon some of the specifics of the plan and some of the safety issues we think we have addressed appropriately, simply because of the location of this property and its waterfront situation. John.
State your full name, please.
John Barnhart.
Swear the testimony you're going to make this matter will be the truth and nothing but the truth. I do.
John, you previously testified before this board as a licensed professional planner and engineer.
Yes.
And would you be kind enough simply to take the board through the plan and the variance slide?
Sure. The plan that I have up right now is, I guess we'll call Exhibit A1. It's an aerial photo of the site. You can see the rear yard area, which is the subject of the proposed pool location. You can see in this photo the existing hot tub, which is approximately 3 feet from the side property line with our neighbor. And you can see that in the rear yard, a deck that expands to the bulkhead, and then there's a covered porch area that is up about 1 step, if anybody was able to visit the site, is up about 1 step from the balance of the deck area in the rear of the home. The main flow of the home coming from the house into the backyard is basically at the center. There's a couple of sets of doors that flow right out into the backyard deck area. So the proposal, as Chris pointed out, is to construct a pool in the backyard. The idea is to remove the existing hot tub and utilize the same setback that the hot tub has on that side property line, and extend the pool toward the what I would call the southerly side or southerly property line. The location of the pool is basically dictated by the existing physical improvements on the property, which is why I wanted to show you the aerial photo. The pool is bound by obviously the existing bulkhead on the water side. It is bound by an existing, what is a tile floor with tile floor patio that has a roof over it that will come right to the edge of the pool. You'll be able to sit under cover and look over into the pool. So it's bound by that. And then it's bound in this direction because, as I mentioned, the flow of the house comes right out of here. So Mr. Delinka's idea and thought is that he would like to maintain a nice open space here because the flow comes out of the house and then right to the usable deck area. So why is the variance justified? Well, obviously, we could move the pool. I mean, looking at the plan, obviously the pool could be reduced, it could be moved. You've seen that, in many applications where we've discussed pool variances. But why do we think this is in a location that obviously makes sense for Mr. Delinka's plan or property layout, but why does it make sense for the surrounding property owners without creating any negatives? Well, first of all, we're on the bayfront, so we're really only dealing with the impacts to one neighbor with this specific application. As you know, Chris and I have done a number of pool applications, and you've got 4 backyards, they all back up to each other, you're putting a pool in the corner, and there's setback issues, and it potentially affects 3 or 4 different neighbors. We don't have that here. We're dealing with one individual neighbor, who, as Chris pointed out, is already in support of the application. So how do we make sure that we don't create a noise issue or create a safety issue when we're pushing the pool all the way to the one side? Well, you heard from Chris, and you can see in this aerial photo very well, from a noise standpoint and a privacy standpoint, if you look at the neighboring property, the actual usable deck area, if you were able to visit the site, is about, I would say, 15 or 16 feet from the side property line. Between the side property line and the edge of their deck, is an ivy ground cover, a very thick ivy ground cover, and then some very large, what appear to be black pine trees that are right along that side property line. You can see them very prominently in this photo. So those trees, together with the positioning of the existing improvements at our neighbor's property, we think creates a very nice barrier with regard to visual and also potential noise impact. So in our opinion, the potential negative impact with regard to noise is covered basically because of the existing landscape. So when we look at safety, that's the other obviously main issue with regard to pools. What we will have here is we have those trees and those ivy that you'd have to climb through to get to a fence that would separate the 2 properties. So you have the trees and the landscaping. You will have a fence. And then what Mr. Delinka has also decided to propose is approximately a 2-foot-high wall along that edge, that closest edge of the pool to that property line. That wall will function as a cascading waterfall down into the pool. But in my opinion, what it will also function as is yet another line of defense, of safety defense. So if a person did decide to jump off of the Broggs deck, walk through the ivy, go through the trees, climb over the fence, they're going to land on a deck that still has a barrier between them and the pool. So
John, that's like an additional 2 feet before you actually get to any river that has that.
approximately, yeah. And if you're concerned about safety with regard to water depth, Mr. Delinka had pointed out to me that on this end of the pool, he actually intends, if I'm saying something incorrectly, he can correct me, but he actually intends for that to be a shallow area that he can actually, I'm sure people have seen it at resorts and things, you can sit lounge chairs in and you're actually still sitting in the pool. So
That shallow end will be on the Broggs side of the property.
that's correct. So we believe that, again, I can't stand in front of you and say, we can't move the pool, we can't shorten the pool. But we believe that working with all the confines of the rear of the site and looking at how it would potentially impact our neighbors, we believe that we have multiple lines of safety defense and adequate lines of defense with regard to visual and also noise buffer.
John, you and I have done, you said a lot of pool cases, and 3 feet is not a typical request.
That's correct.
In light of the fact that this particular location, you think that this location is warranted, particularly in light of the fact that you don't have a typical neighborhood setup. We're not dealing with somebody's rear yard where you would typically have a house here to deal with, a house here to deal with, and a house here to deal with.
That's correct.
We've only had the Brogg house, and we've dealt with their issues with respect to where their living space is, where their house is, so there's no noise impacts or really any safety issues to be considered to be concerned about.
That's correct. And one of the things that Mr. Delinka pointed out to me that I hadn't realized is when I was asking him questions, could you slide the pool, could you move the pool? As I mentioned already, his main flow comes right out of this location, and the windows around this, what I'll call a turret-style piece of the rear of the building, the windows all are crank-out, open-out windows. So, if he's got a nice day and is able to have the windows open, he would still like to be able to walk past the windows with more than ample space between the pool and that area. So, we believe that he has created a plan that does not create a negative for his neighbors.
John, that shorter setback, I mean, that's not something that is alien to the Bayshore Drive area, and I'm just looking at another pool up the bay a little bit.
Yeah, I can't testify to the setbacks, but you can see a little bit of a pattern there. These pools are all pushed to one side of their properties, but for the one in the center of the photo.
Chris, one question. John, is the pool equipment heater, is that existing or is that new?
The pool equipment would be proposed, and it is around the side and will conform to setback.
Well, isn't there there's no existing equipment there now for jacuzzi, nothing?
I think that hot tub is
Yeah, I don't think there's anything for the pool there now.
There's nothing in that yard right now at all.
Okay,
You walked through it when you did your inspections yesterday or today? I did. It's empty.
We need to get the equipment up.
That's fine.
The floodplain, okay.
John,
Yes, sir.
say some more about that wall. I didn't quite follow you on that.
Okay, what Mr. Doliker would like to do at the 3-foot setback line is to create, so you'd be standing on the deck, right? If you squeezed in here and stood on the deck, next to you would be, he's intending about a 2-foot-high wall. So that would stick above the deck grade, and it'll have circulation up through it so that it can cascade down the face of the wall, which would be on the water side of the pool, to create a feature. So what I was trying to explain is, in my opinion, it does create another safety barrier from somebody that would want to try to hop the fence. They're not all of a sudden stepping right into the pool because they'd have a wall between them.
I asked because nothing shows on the cross-section there.
That was something that we contemplated. Right.
I wasn't sure.
Gotcha.
I understand it now.
All right, thank you.
If you did that and somebody hopped out at night, they're going to trip on that wall and hit their head and probably kill themselves. And if you look at the way this is laid out, you're saying for safety reasons and flow, but if you take the calculation from the tip of the pool to the tip of the curved, where you said the casement windows were?
Right here?
You didn't want to impede flow. That's 12 feet. I could drive a car through 12 feet. So safety, it doesn't really make sense. You're squeezing it down to a 3-foot portion down here, and if you look at the path coming back, it actually dead ends and runs into the pool. Margate with 10 foot, I'm a big proponent of 10 foot's too much. But in this case here, 3 foot is way too little. This should either be 5 or 6 foot. You just don't have the safety and the flow, and it's not going to impede the deck on the other side. What you said just doesn't fly, at least to me.
Okay.
This is 3 feet, so this is 1 foot here. So this is 2 feet.
Any board members have any questions or comments?
Yeah, are there steps, where are the steps located to get into the pool? Are they by the column area, the steps to get into the pool? The deep end. Yeah. There's a wall cascading on the other end. Like an entrance,
The answer to that question is,
the entrance for everybody to get into the pool.
he intends that you'd be able to step down from the column area, and then you would probably also be able to step down right between the hot tub and the column. So the steps would be along this area.
Yeah, that's sort of like, that's like a hot tub. You're right.
Let me just explain something.
Here you go.
Two things. First of all, prior to me buying the house, the previous owner tried to put a pool in, and I think he tried to put it in the middle. The things are already in the ground, and then he scrapped it, because what happens is there's a side door here, and then there's another step down right here. So the first 3 feet is not applicable to have any space. It's actually a step down. So you need to step down, and your first step can't be into the pool. And these windows, like I mentioned, open outwardly. So if you were to step down here and then have to walk around a window, if I push this out 3 or 4 feet, it just doesn't work.
And that's what the previous owner did. He actually put the pilings in and then scrapped it later. Once the pilings were in and he saw where the pool was, he said, it doesn't work. And it truly doesn't. I will not put a pool in if I have to move it to the left because it just won't work for the house. I'll lose pretty much all my deck space. As you can see also, the only way to get down to the dock is over here. And if you push this pool there and these windows open up, you almost can't get to the dock safely. So, I can maybe shrink the pool, but as you see on the diagram, it's only 9 feet wide. So, I'm going to be putting seats in, basically lounges in over here, which doesn't leave me with a lot of pool space.
Okay.
I mean, that's nice, but it still hasn't changed my opinion. You either need to cut the pool by 2 feet, or you need to slide it over 2 feet.
Well, cutting it by 2
You'd be at least what Ventnor, Longport, and everybody approves. What is their code? Just because we're a little bit more, but you're just asking too much. You could always change your windows so they don't open out, too.
Okay, anybody else?
Roger?
Yes.
We didn't address your recommendations about more planning. It's on the southwest side. Wasn't it a continuation of those cedars or arborvitaes, whatever they are?
My recommendation?
Yeah, there's something in your report about
For considerations, I think he thinks are recommendations, they're just existing conditions.
No, what I said was that you can consider the existing evergreens between his property and the property.
Oh, that's what you, I thought you were talking about the other side.
Needs a smaller stake.
Right here, this, you're talking, what is the hot tub size?
Yeah.
Not the existing one you're talking about.
Well, I guess...
Not what's existing there now.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it doesn't matter, but it's just an awful small space.
Small pool, too.
Yeah, but this is your way to get in there, and you got two walls there.
Well, you step down off of that, and you probably have some room here like that.
Yeah, you don't have much room in there.
It's just, well...
I just think there's not a lot of room to go in there.
To me, if you're the owner, you know how much room you have, you know?
Look at this. You got your... So here's your one column, so you got this.
Here's the 3 columns.
We'll amend the application to a 5-foot setback to the edge of the...
What? Excuse me? Is that from the Brog property? From the Brog?
Chris, you can get that by making it 1 foot shorter, like Roger said, and whatever he wants.
Slide the pool that way, at least he...
Do you have to say anything?
Yeah, essentially, as the applicant said, there's only one variance here. It's for pool setback, requirement's 10 feet. The original proposal was 3 feet. They've agreed to amend it to 5 feet from the pool's edge to the setback on the, I believe, the right side setback. There's no conditions that I can see, so there'd be a motion for that in the affirmative.
Okay, we will need revised plans.
And revised plans. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
That's right. Does anybody from the public like to speak? Okay, public portion's closed.
I'll make the motion, we approve the application
I'll
as
second.
Stan presented it.
Get a vote?
Tom Collins,
I vote in favor of the application with the amendment to the 5 feet. I think 5 feet is a minimum for safety. Other than that, I wish you all the best of luck, you'll be glad you have the 5 feet versus the 3, because it's not usable.
Clem Wozleski?
I have a question about this 5 feet. Is it to the pool, or is it to that wall that's the waterfall?
It's always to the water's edge, Glenn.
Well, yeah, but they're showing the 3 feet on their drawing as to the back of the wall. And if we're taking the 3 to 5, then it's to the back of the wall.
Isn't that...
The proposal would be 5 feet to the water's edge. So if he decides to build a wall, the wall would essentially be the coping on that side, which would be permitted to be closer to the sideline.
So then you're...
The back of the wall, depending on the actual thickness of the wall, the back of the wall would be less than 5 feet.
Okay, so the wording will be to the water's edge.
The water's edge, yeah. That's the way the ordinance reads to, I believe.
Yeah.
This is uncomfortable. The trees that they're claiming are going to block sound and view is a non-argument. The trees aren't even on their property. You can see right under them. And the fact that the neighbor doesn't object is also a non-argument because he may not always be the neighbor. There's no reason the pool can't be shortened more than 5 feet. I vote no.
Turn your mic off.
Jim Galantino?
As to the variance for the 10-foot, and it's going to be a 5-foot, I vote in favor. I think the pool would add some definition to the backyard.
Mike Cristaldi?
I'm going to sort of request that we get cuts of these things so we know. I agree with Clem that we don't know where things are going with this. As the last variance that we just did, there's no side cut on this to where the wall is for us to get any definition of where things are, what they're going to be. I'm going to vote yes on it, but I'm not sure of that wall there, but my vote is yes.
Craig Palmisano?
I'm going to vote yes on the application due to the fact that the neighbor doesn't have a problem with this. There's no detriment to the bayside at all, so I'm in favor of it. I'll vote yes.
David Carter?
I vote yes to the application based on the 5 feet, and also I buy into what Craig said about the neighbors.
Despina Hess has excused herself for the evening. Remy Pelosi?
I vote to approve based on the amended application. I don't see any detriment. I do believe that trees, they are going to provide a buffer, and the fact that the neighbor is not here to oppose it, I think it's a good application.
Joe DiGirolamo?
Neighbors aren't opposing. The 5-foot change that we've made seems reasonable, and I don't think there'll be much of a noise factor for the neighbors, and they're not seem to be too concerned about it, so I vote in favor of this proposal.
Mike Richmond?
I'm going to vote yes. I think 5 feet is plenty of room for safety issues, and besides that, there's only one neighbor involved instead of 3, so I'm going to vote yes.
Very much.
Application passes 8-1.
Anybody want to take a break? All right, we're going to take a 5-minute break and one more case. Yeah.
I mean, if they don't show us stuff like on that planner, where the hell the planner go? On the one that drawn of the front of the house, with the steps out.
You know what you do? If you see that before we vote on it.
Right.
199, 100 North Glass on the big yellow house.
I mean, he can go get a building permit for a duplex.
Okay.
Here we go.
Okay. Our next and last case is Lori Friedman and Wendy Friedman of 118 South Nassau Avenue, Block 15, Lot 18 in the S40 District to grant a C variance for a swimming pool, third floor deck, second floor deck setbacks, and possibly others. Taxes are current and proof of advertising and notifying is satisfied.
Roger Rubin.
Further testimony about the matter will be
I do. The subject property is a 2.5-story house under construction by permit on a lot of 59 feet, 4 inches by 80 feet, 4744 square feet. Per the plan submitted herein as produced by architect Mark Zawacki, the applicants wish to add the following to the construction program: a rear second-floor deck requiring setback variances, a rear third-floor deck requiring variances for the same setbacks, and because third-floor decks are not permitted, and a swimming pool not meeting pool setback requirements. Variances required are pool setback 10 feet required from side and rear. It is 6 feet from the rear, but 14 feet to the side. Third-floor deck not permitted by ordinance unless house faces the ocean, whereas this side, rear of the house, technically faces a privately owned lot, the Osborne Beach Club. And the second and third floor decks both have 10 feet setbacks as compared to 16 feet required. Considerations. As to the pool setback, this is an unusual situation with the Osborne Beach Club rather than a single-family house in the rear, and in addition, a large grade difference wherein the land drops down several feet to the club property. The required fence plus grade difference also supplies what would appear to be a considerable safety protection. Also remember that the setback to the house to the right is 14 feet and 33 feet to the left property line. Second, the third floor deck and deck setback issues are similar in terms of board considerations. Do they interfere with views or create problems of mass, aesthetics, or privacy? Site visits will be instructive with attention not only to the house on the right side, but also to the beach club in the rear. No conditions are suggested at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Rubin, members of the board. My name is Chris Valens, and I represent Wendy and Lori Friedman. Wendy is here this evening. With respect to the property they own at 118 South Nassau Avenue, it's block 15 or lot 18. And I can tell you, if today was the day right after the notice went out for this house, this room would have been full. I have spent the last 2 weeks speaking with, talking to neighbors, interested parties, beach club members, and much to everybody's dismay, this application really amounted to much more than it appeared to be at the beginning. What we are here for this evening is everybody's seen the house that is under construction. These guys lost a year as a result of the storm and trying to get some storm money. They wanted to get the house started while coming to the planning board at the same time seeking the variances for the decks. The decks are only 6 feet by 12 feet. They're not decks that run across the back of the house. And the setback variance for the pool. As I said, what you see there now is all under building permit. It all conforms to ordinance standards, if not falls well within ordinance standards. It's an unusual lot to build on. Mark did a really nice job because of the grade change and some of the issues you have to deal with there, and the wall of the beach club in the back, which we have effectively dealt with, and we'll talk a little bit more about tonight. The variances for this evening are 3. Setback to a second floor deck of 10 feet or 16. A third floor deck immediately above that. Both of those decks are about 6 by 12 and come off of bedrooms, and they are on the ocean end of the house, so to speak. As well as a setback to a pool in the rear yard of 6 feet where 10 feet is required. One of the things that Roger points out is you have to deal with the issues of views for people down the block with those decks in the back. What Mark will explain in a little bit more detail, and I will try to make clear, and you can start with the Cinderbrand house 3 houses down. Those houses on that block, if you go to from Nassau, if you go to the back, the rear yard of those houses, they actually do enjoy a view down toward the beach. If you're looking this way in the back of the houses, they really do. And it's a result of the beach club and the fact that the bulkhead returns there. So if you're standing, say, in the back of the Cinderbrand house, you actually can see the ocean and the beach. So one of the concerns in this regard was, well, what now is going to encroach into that view corridor? With all of these houses were built before the current ordinance. This house has a setback of 16 feet from the rear bulkhead, 16 feet. None of those houses toward Atlantic Avenue have anything less than 10. I mean, they're all 10 and less. So the rear yard setback to all the houses to the right is 10 feet or less. So if you do that math, my house is 16 feet back, Freeman's house is 16 feet back, the decks are 6 feet, so the decks are set back 10 feet. There is no house that will even see the edge of these decks if you stand in that corridor in the back. It does not encroach beyond the back of any house, which was intentional. I mean, the house immediately to the right, Rick Mayer's house, I talked with him extensively, and his lawyer, and his planner. He has a rear yard setback of 10 feet. So the back of his house will be equivalent to the deck that we're asking for the variance for. It will not encroach any further out the back of the immediate neighbor's house, so it creates no view impingement whatsoever. The house to the right of that, the Newman's house, that actually has a setback of 9 feet, so they're further out than our decks are. The Cinderbrand house to the right of that, he's got a setback, that's the Sonny Goldberg house from like 1969, he's got a setback of 2 feet in the back. So you stand in the back of their house, you can see Longport. So the decks that we asked for the variances for 10 feet versus 16 do not impinge upon any view of any house up that block. With that being said, let Mark kind of run through this. I apologize. Mark Zawacki is the licensed architect of the state of New Jersey. Mark, you'll need to be sworn.
State your full name for the record.
My name is Mark Zawacki,
And spell your last name.
Z-A-W-A-C-K-I.
You swear the testimony you got to give this matter with the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Mark, you're a licensed architect?
Yes, sir.
And you've been working before?
Yes, I have.
And you have done the plans that have been submitted for the Freedmans for this house. Would you tell the board where the Freedman's house is now, pursuant to permit, what's proposed, and then kind of walk through the existing conditions of the property and what it is, and why we're here this evening?
Okay.
Mark, would you please use the mic?
All right, the existing structure, as you can see, this is the existing house. This would be where the wall is, and I guess there's a garage storage unit, which is this little end of the storage unit right there.
Can't understand.
Now, louder?
Yes, please.
All right, here's the existing house. As you see, we have a railing that was going down the block wall, and this is a portion of the storage unit, I guess, for the beach club.
So that perspective, Mark, is taken from the beach club. You're standing on top of the storage shed at the beach club.
I am standing on top of the storage shed looking back at the house.
And that house was demolished.
That's correct. And as you can see, the elevation of the existing grade is at 15.3 there. Okay, so it has a very high elevation. The street elevation is probably about 7. So it has a pretty dramatic drop from front to back. The side yards, it steps down over here and over here at 12.5 as far as the existing grades were. Now, of course, it's been cleaned up. We're going to bring grade back in and bring it back up to the original grades. So what we've done is the existing setback of the existing house was 8.4.
The existing rear yard setback.
Correct, and we're at 16 feet, and the proposed decks will still not be any closer than the existing structure that was there.
So Mark, the existing decks are going to be set back 10 feet. The old house was all the way out at 8.4.
That's correct. That's correct.
How high was the old house?
The old house, well, it's kind of misleading because you have, there's a whole another floor underneath this that is below grade.
But it's not 3
It's 2 full stories, but you can't see it because half of it's underground because the grade is so high. And that all got flooded during the Sandy storm.
The house has to be the same configuration.
The new house is going to be up
Actually, the first floor,
The garage entrance will be at grade off the sidewalk as with the old house.
that's correct. And the first floor elevation will be at 13, according to the new flood maps, okay? So as you can see, here's an aerial photograph, and I kind of showed a dotted line here, which kind of shows how much we're removing and actually opening up views for the adjacent properties. The property on the beach side, which I know very well, Connie, she probably sits about 5 feet off of that block wall. So she's, sitting out, what, 11 feet further than we are, okay? So we're actually kind of in a hole. We're sitting back from where everybody else is, to the left and to the right, okay? And of course, we have the beach club here, and you can see this block wall here, which is roughly about 8 feet high, plus or minus. So the idea, of course, would be to we would have this elevated area which was existing, and we would maintain that existing elevation because of the views. The pool will be elevated. The floor is at 13. The grade out here is at 15. So it's actually roughly 2 feet higher than the floor line. And if you look at, I'll pass out these renderings. Okay, what we're doing is the balconies that we have located are off to the ocean side, so they're not impeding with the adjacent neighbor to the right. And as far as Connie's side, we are roughly about 12'4" off the property line on her side, okay?
When you say Connie, I'm not sure everybody knows who we're talking about. Beachfront?
The beachfront property, which she got remarried and she's living in most of the time LPI. But regardless, I've sent her the renderings and she had no problem with them. I've been in contact with her without any comment whatsoever.
Show the board where the 2 decks are in relation to the second floor and the third floor that we are seeking variance relief for.
Okay, the location of the decks would be on the second floor here, which is a 6 by 12. On the third floor, 6 by 12 also, they would stack on top. And as you can see with the rendering, you're talking about a pair of columns that supports it, so it's still open, so you can still see through it. It's not a solid structure, so it's transparent.
One of the issues with respect to the reduced setback and the third floor deck as proposed, one of the issues, the primary issue is really privacy, whether those decks would allow this homeowner to impede upon people's privacy. You talked a little bit about the setback on the neighbor to the beach side. What would the surrounding area look like, and does this provide some opportunity to look in somebody's windows?
Absolutely not. It's the reason why is because from the side of the deck to the property here is roughly about 25 feet. Okay, and then plus his house is another 10 feet. So when you put that all together, I mean, we've actually opened up his views 100% of what he had before.
And of course, to the rear is the beach club. So
There's a beach club, and there's nothing there.
And on the ocean side is your friend Connie, who said her house is X number of feet away from those decks.
That's correct. Well, they're 12'4" from the property line, but she's probably another, 10 feet from there.
So at least 20 feet from her?
Yes. Yes.
So then, do you think those decks, as proposed with the setback we're seeking,
But it-
create any detriment or substantial detriment to the neighborhood or the public good?
Absolutely not. And like I said, when I discussed it, whether she didn't foresee any problem with it.
And we've discussed it with the Beach Club, we've discussed it with Mr. Mayor next door, Mr. Newman next to them, Mr. Superintendent next to them, and everybody is okay with the plan, obviously. No one is here tonight to object.
Right, and plus the fact, like I said, the deck is not a solid structure, it's transparent.
And touch upon the pool a little bit, and the relief that we're seeking for the pool. Do you believe that the setback proposed doesn't create any safety issues or noise or sound issues for the neighbors?
Well, actually, we have a 6-foot setback, and you just approved the 5-foot setback, so I don't foresee any problem with the setback. One of the things that we might want to talk about is the height of the railing. I show it at 4 feet, but you got to understand, it's an 8-foot-high wall plus another 4-foot-high fence, so it's roughly 12 feet. I mean, if we could drop that down to 3 feet, we would still be able to meet code from grade to the top of the railing of 5 foot. It would actually be 5'10" if we had a 3-foot, because we're at 12.5 on the sides, we're at 15.3, so it's roughly about 2'10" grade elevation. 3-foot fence would put it at 5'10". So I'd rather see a 3-foot fence than a 4-foot fence. And that would also lower it 1 foot.
But we're going to comply with what the code requires.
Well, if the...
Right?
Right. Well,
I don't think the board has the discretion to grant us relief for a 3-foot fence where a fence is required.
well, the question becomes, is it measured from grade or is it measured from the top of our pool deck? If it's measured from the grade, we're at 5'10", and 5 foot is required. If it's measured from the pool deck, it's at 4 feet.
It's measured from grade.
It's measured from grade. So in essence, we could put a 3-foot fence there.
It's measured from grade.
Okay.
If that comes out, yes.
Okay. So what I would do then is I would rather see a 3-foot fence around here going to here, and then when it came to Connie's area here, we would provide a 5-foot high fence because her grade is also elevated
On this 5 foot on the sides,
on the east side. And we'd wrap that around here so it'd be 5 feet from grade on this side.
and how about on the north side?
The north side, over here, I would suggest
North side.
over here.
The right side of the house.
This right. Well, this is going to be elevated here, so the fence would be sitting on top of the pool deck. So it goes back to a 3-foot fence. And you'd want 3 feet anyway, because you don't want people falling over.
No, there's a difference there.
Yeah, some closing gates on that side.
Well, I have a self-closing gate with an alarm over here, but you're saying this whole side has to be 5 feet.
You need 5 feet separate, you need to climb 5 feet.
Okay, so then from this side, this fence would be roughly 7 feet from grade up. Right?
Just to be clear, 5 feet on each side, 3 feet in the rear, is that what we're talking about?
That's okay.
Yes. So we're talking about 5 feet here, 5 feet here, 3 feet along here, and then 5 feet back here.
Now, and you've also, and Mr. Rubin, I have to put on the record, Mr. Bergman, we have been in contact with the Beach Club, and when we dig this pool, we said that we would make sure that the wall, Beach Club wall,
Right.
can structurally handle putting a pool in that rear yard so it's not compromised. And that can be a condition or in your notes, however you'd like to do it. But we will have an engineer look at the wall and make sure that whatever needs to be done to make sure it is secure will be done with respect to the...
I've actually talked to Butch Czar about this already, and Butch Czar, who's a structural engineer, to discuss this with him, also to inspect the wall and do a thorough investigation on the existing structure. And if there's anything that needs to be done to shore up the wall, we will take care of it. The other thing is we're not going to be driving pilings here. We're going to probably use helical piles, which are screwed into the ground, so there won't be any vibration and pounding or anything like that that would interfere with any other structure.
I don't think that has to be part of the planning board's.
No.
That would be up to Jimmy.
You're talking about the pilings for the pool?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's all the testimony we have this evening. And board members, I understand with respect to new construction, how this board views variances, but I think in light of the peculiar circumstances with respect to this property and the fact that the rear yard setback is so significant and substantial compared to the other houses on the block, that these two small decks encroaching into that setback, equidistant to the other rear yard setbacks on the block, really kind of brings these guys even with the other houses in terms of view availability and outdoor living space. And I don't really think in this situation there's any impediment or any impairment of any of the properties on either side or to the rear for that matter.
Chris, a question for you. Who owns the retaining wall to the ocean side?
The Beach Club will tell us that we own it.
No, to the ocean side.
Tom, I'm sorry, I don't know that.
Beach Club is to the Longport side. And the Beach Club says that you own the back wall?
Yes.
When I was inspecting the property, the ocean retaining wall, east, has been compromised so badly, it's pushed over from all the construction that's going on. And if you walk back and stand on the back wall where the Beach Club is, and now you're going to put a pool in, I didn't think of that, that's already starting to get, from all that compact fill, you can see that's moving already too. And I
understand, as you know,
I know what I'm...
whether it's ours or theirs, if we screw it up, we got to fix it.
I think he's talking about the wall between your client. Yeah, right.
The beach side,
Well, you're talking about the angled wall that's there? Well, that's coming out anyway. Yeah, it's noted on the plans, if you look on the plans, it actually calls for it to be removed.
You actually show it on the picture.
Get replaced.
And plus the fact that all the
Mark, stick on the wall. The wall on the ocean side,
Right.
the beach side, next to Connie, that's being replaced?
Yes, that's part of the original plan. The approved plan.
Yeah, I thought we talked about that.
And I have been in touch with the Beach Club, and they are very aware of the condition of that wall and our obligation to maintain it and improve it, which these guys have agreed to do.
I just have one question. What's the name of the two dogs?
What? Roger, I have a question. If the Beach Club property was ever sold, and somebody was to build a house there, and say they had parking underneath, their first floor level will be equal to that, to your level of your pool, wouldn't it? You know, you'd be up 13 feet, and they'd have a 3-foot fence on top of that wall. Am I right? And you know what I mean? If you were to put a... You know?
I don't know what the Beach Club's elevation is.
Well, it's ground level right now. I mean, there's nothing there. It's.
I know, but I don't know if it's elevation 5 or 3 or...
It's 5.
My thought was if they build a first floor, it could be equal to that pool level. And you'd have a 3-foot fence.
I don't know, not knowing the...
What's the point? The safety issues of the create.
Well, if the Beach Club was sold, then that fence would be too low.
The 3-foot fence would be too low, wouldn't it?
Well, you know, the funny thing is, I've been assuming that that wall, I'm sorry, I've been assuming that that wall belonged to the Beach Club. If in fact the wall belongs to you, to your client, you don't even need to have any fence on top of it, because you've got over a 5-foot wall, because that's your grade. So, I think we're covered, legally covered, and the 3 feet is way more than legally covered. Yeah.
Chris, do you have a survey showing who owns the wall? That would answer a few questions. Beach Club wall.
The wall kind of goes along the line and kind of goes to the Beach Club.
Beach Club admits that we own it.
Is it sitting right on the line on your side or on the Beach Club side?
On the line. I mean, it's the line.
It crosses. It's in the middle. Got it.
And Tom, I know historically, from what I understand, the house was there for 3 feet. We had evidence that that wall was built to support the rear grade of the house.
Got it. So it's a shared common wall. You want to see this, Bob?
But they're giving it to you.
Okay. Anybody else from the board?
Make a motion?
No, anybody from the public like to speak? Okay, public portion is closed. Would somebody like to make a motion to approve?
We need the variances
All
first.
right, sorry.
Sorry. The motion is in the affirmative to approve 3C variances. One's the pool setback requirement's 10 feet, proposal 6 feet. Deck setback for the second and third floor requirement 16 feet, proposals 10 feet, and also to permit a third floor deck, which isn't permitted. Did I hear that there was a condition that about the beach club, about the applicant maintaining the wall?
No.
Or was that eliminated?
If the wall is compromised as a result of construction, we obviously would repair it.
You'd have to anyway, because I was going to say, okay, so there's no condition as to that. Mr. Rubin, any conditions that you have?
Just revised plans clarifying the 3-foot fence in the rear and the 5-foot on both sides.
I mean, you can vote on it as one, as if you're not, then just put reasons on why, what variances you're voting for, and what variances if you're voting against, and give your reasons for that. But we don't have to separate the variances.
Okay.
Can
we get a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second?
Why is there so, why are we...
Tom Cobb?
This is a really nice picture. Pictures tell a lot of words, but I actually was down at the property. I don't agree with everything that was presented tonight. I absolutely have no problem with the pool. I think you've given us that extra foot because I believe the 5 foot is adequate. I have no problem with the second floor deck and the variance required there. In this case here, though, I cannot support a third floor deck. It's not on an ocean front. I think it will infringe on the neighborhood. So all except the third floor deck I would be in favor of, but in this case I have to vote no.
I feel the same way Tom does. The pool, fine. I'm glad you mentioned the structural aspects of it. I was concerned about the surcharge on that existing wall. The second floor deck, I don't think it's going to impinge on anybody's view, and being off a bedroom, it won't ever be used anyhow. So I vote yes for the pool and the second floor deck setback, but no for the third floor deck.
Jim Galantino?
I mean, it's tough to look at it and see that the actual deck is facing the ocean, and then that's the whole intent, was to allow people who had oceanfront properties to have a third floor deck. So if you stand out on their deck, you can see the third floor, and it is facing the ocean. So, I mean, on that testimony alone, would grant them the right to have that deck. On the pool setback, I agree, and on the second floor deck, I agree, so I approve.
Craig Palmisano?
I'm fine with the pool, and I'm fine with both decks. Many of you don't know that I was a fireman, and I like the decks as a means of egress and be able to throw a ladder up to a person. It's easier to get somebody off a deck than it is a back window. And being a fireman, I have to go for the decks. I approve it.
Mike Cristaldi?
I don't like that Greg gave Mr. Belenson that shot at us on the third floor decks for safety. I approve the application.
David Carter?
I agree with the pool, and I agree with both decks.
Randy Pelosi?
I vote to approve the pool, the third floor, and the second floor decks. In light of the fact there are no neighbors here complaining about it, and the fact that the setbacks of the homes that are already in existence, and these decks align with them, it's not going to impede anyone's air, light, space, privacy. I think they're all fine. The house looks really nice, and I vote to approve all three.
Josie Giraldo?
I'm voting in favor of the pool and the second and third floor decks. I think that the setbacks of those decks are more than what's required. And I also believe that if there's no one here from the club objecting to this, then the third floor deck should be allowed.
Mike Richmond?
Yeah, I'm going to approve the pool, the second and third floor deck. Just like Joe said, the beach club's there, it's not a house. I don't think there's going to be any privacy issues, and I'm going to approve it.
Thank you very much.
Can I make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I'll second.
Is there anybody from the public? I already did that.
No, in general.
Oh, is there anybody from the public that'd like to say anything? No? We have some other business.
Okay, I'd like to remind everyone about the class being offered at the ACC mainland campus. It is on Friday, the 21st of March. Those that have given me their paperwork are all paid and ready to go. Anybody has any questions, please contact me so I can give you directions. It should be the back Rutgers building. Easy to get to. Okay? That's it. Now someone can make their motion to adjourn.
Second?
Remy did.
All right.
Yeah, thanks. Roger, thanks. See you guys. See you guys.